Mariana Torres, owner of a small, rundown cafe in downtown Los Angeles, struggles to keep her grandmother's legacy alive while facing debt, broken equipment, and the pressure of paying for her daughter Sofia's college education. One day, an elegant and mysterious man, Rashid Al-Mahmoud, a billionaire devastated by the death of his wife, stumbles into the cafe and finds in the taste of Mariana's Turkish coffee a vivid memory of his late wife. Moved, he offers to invest in the cafe, without controlling anything, just to preserve what Mariana has built. In the following weeks, the renovation of the cafe transforms the place and Mariana's life. The community returns, Sofia finds her professional purpose, and Rashid rediscovers meaning. But a year later, a revelation changes everything. Rashid confesses that he has been looking for Mariana for months. She is, in fact, his biological daughter, given up for adoption by her mother, Layla, when she was young, under pressure from her family. Layla died without finding her again, but left a letter full of love and regret. After shock, pain, and reflection, Mariana accepts Rashid into her life, not as a father right away, but as someone who loves, respects, and wants to repair the past. The foundation, created in Layla's memory, grows. Sofia becomes a key player, and Mariana's corner becomes a symbol of hope, legacy, and new beginnings. In the end, the reborn cafe reunites a family that fate had separated, but that love, and a cup of coffee, brought back together. Texto. The morning sun cut through the smog hanging over downtown Los Angeles, casting long shadows across Spring Street. It was barely 7 a.m., but the city was already awake. Car horns blaring, homeless encampments stirring to life, and somewhere in the distance, the rhythmic clatter of a metro train. Amid this urban symphony stood a small, weathered cafe with a hand-painted sign that read, Mariana's Corner. The paint was chipping, the windows needed cleaning, and the wooden door had seen better days. But inside, the aroma of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls told a different story. Mariana Torres wiped down the counter for the third time that morning, her movements mechanical, practiced. At 42, she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, though you wouldn't know it from her warm smile. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her apron, once white, now a testament to years of service, bore the stains of countless coffee spills and flour dust. The cafe was empty, except for two regular customers. Old Mr. Henderson reading his newspaper in the corner, and a young college student named Amy, headphones in, typing furiously on her laptop. Mariana glanced at the clock. 7:15. In 3 hours, she'd have to close early to meet with the bank manager. Again. The thought made her stomach tighten. 3 months behind on rent. Equipment breaking down. Her daughter Sofia's college tuition due in 2 weeks. The numbers didn't add up, no matter how many times she ran them through her head. The door chime rang. A bright, cheerful sound that felt almost mocking given her circumstances. A man stepped inside, and immediately, the atmosphere shifted. He wore an impeccably tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Mariana made in 6 months, and his presence commanded attention without demanding it. He was perhaps in his mid-50s, with salt and pepper hair, olive skin, and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Behind him stood a younger man, clearly security, who remained by the door. "Good morning," Mariana said, her customer service smile firmly in place despite her inner turmoil. "Welcome to Mariana's Corner. What can I get for you?" The man approached the counter with measured steps, his expensive leather shoes barely making a sound on the worn linoleum floor. "Good morning," he replied, his accent placing him somewhere from the Middle East. His English perfect but melodic. "What would you recommend?" Mariana studied him for a moment. She'd served thousands of customers over the years and had developed an instinct for reading people. This man was different, not just wealthy, but something more. There was a weariness behind his polished exterior, a heaviness she recognized because she carried it herself. "Our cinnamon rolls are baked fresh every morning," she said, "and the Turkish coffee is strong, probably the only authentic one you'll find in this part of LA. My grandmother's recipe." Something flickered across the man's face. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "Turkish coffee," he repeated softly. "That is unexpected. I will have that, please, and one of your cinnamon rolls." As Mariana prepared his order, she felt his eyes following her movements. It wasn't uncomfortable or intrusive, but observant, like he was studying her the way an art collector might study a painting. She ground the coffee beans by hand, the way her grandmother had taught her, and prepared it in the traditional sezve pot over the small burner she kept specifically for this purpose. "You know the proper method," the man observed, his tone approving. "Most places here," They do not. My grandmother was from Istanbul, Mariana explained, placing the small cup before him along with a glass of water and the warm cinnamon roll. She insisted I learn the right way. Said coffee made with respect tastes better. The man smiled, a genuine expression that softened his entire face. Your grandmother was a wise woman. He took a sip, closed his eyes, and for a moment seemed to be somewhere else entirely. When he opened them again, there was moisture there, exactly like home, he whispered. Mariana nodded, unsure what to say. She busied herself with cleaning, giving him space for whatever memory he was experiencing. The security guard remained statue still by the door, and Mr. Henderson continued reading his newspaper, oblivious to the interaction unfolding. The man ate slowly, deliberately, savoring each bite of the cinnamon roll. When he finished, he sat back and looked around the cafe, really looked at it. His gaze traveled over the mismatched furniture, the faded photographs on the walls showing the cafe's history, the old espresso machine that coughed more than it steamed, and finally back to Mariana. How long have you owned this place? He asked. 15 years, Mariana replied, a note of pride in her voice despite everything. My grandmother started it 40 years ago. When she got sick, I took over. And business is good? The question was delicate, almost apologetic, as if he already knew the answer. Mariana hesitated. She'd spent years maintaining the facade, pretending everything was fine, smiling through the struggle, but something about this stranger made her want to be honest. It's been better, she admitted quietly. Downtown has changed. The new developments brought fancy coffee chains. Most of my old customers moved away, or she trailed off, not wanting to finish that sentence. I'm managing. The man nodded slowly. Managing. Yes, I know that word well. It is what we say when we are drowning, but still swimming. Before Mariana could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Sofia. Mom, did you transfer the tuition payment? They're saying I need to pay by Friday, or I can't register for classes. Her hands trembled slightly as she put the phone down. The man noticed. I apologize if I am intruding, he said gently, but I recognize the look of someone carrying heavy burdens. I have worn that expression myself many times. Mariana laughed. A short, brittle sound. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who has been there. He paused, then extended his hand across the counter. My name is Rashid Al-Mahmoud. She shook his hand, surprised by the warmth of his grip. Mariana Torres. Mrs. Torres, I would like to ask you something, and I hope you will not think me strange. May I see your kitchen? The request caught her off guard. My kitchen? Why? Indulge an old man's curiosity. Please. Something in his tone, a genuine kindness mixed with what seemed like purpose, made her agree. She led him behind the counter and through the swinging door into the small kitchen. It was cramped but spotlessly clean. Her pride wouldn't allow otherwise. The equipment was old. A refrigerator that hummed too loudly, an oven with a temperamental thermostat, and a mixer she'd repaired herself at least a dozen times. Rashid walked through the space slowly, running his fingers along the countertops, examining the organization, opening and closing cabinets. He studied the handwritten recipe cards tacked to the wall, the photos of Mariana's family, the schedule board showing her working 16-hour days most weeks. You do everything yourself, he stated, rather than asked. Can't afford staff anymore. Sofia helps when she's home from college, but Mariana stopped, unwilling to burden this stranger with her problems. Rashid turned to face her, and his expression was unreadable. Mrs. Torres, I am going to tell you something, and I ask that you hear me fully before you respond. Can you do that? Warily, she nodded. I am not just a businessman, though I own many businesses. I am what people call a venture capitalist. I invest in things, companies, ideas, people. But lately I have found no joy in it. Everything is spreadsheets and projections and soulless. 3 months ago, my wife passed away from cancer. She was my partner in everything. And without her, he paused, collecting himself. Without her, I lost my purpose. I have been traveling, trying to find meaning again. This morning, I instructed my driver to take me somewhere random, somewhere real, and he brought me here. Mariana listened, her heart unexpectedly aching for this wealthy stranger who seemed so lost. That Turkish coffee, Rashid continued, his voice thick with emotion, was the first thing in 3 months that made me feel something other than emptiness. It tasted exactly like the coffee my wife used to make for me every morning. She learned from her grandmother, who learned from hers. The same tradition, the same love in every cup. He looked directly at Mariana. You gave me a gift today, Mrs. Torres. You gave me a moment with my wife again, and I would like to repay that gift, if you will allow me. I don't understand, Mariana said slowly. I would like to invest in your cafe, not buy it, not change it into something corporate and sterile. Invest in it, preserve it, help it thrive. Mariana's first instinct was to refuse, pride had kept her afloat for years, even as water rose around her. Mr. Al-Mahmoud, I appreciate the gesture, but I don't accept charity. This is not charity, he said firmly. This is business. I have been looking for authentic places to invest in, places with heart and history. Your cafe has both. What it lacks is capital and visibility. I can provide those things. In return, I ask for a small percentage of ownership. 20%. You maintain complete control over operations, recipes, everything. I simply want to help this place survive and grow. Why? Mariana asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why would someone like you care about a failing cafe in downtown LA? Rashid was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of deep grief. Because my wife's last wish was for me to find joy again, to help people the way she always did. She ran a small charity in Dubai. Helped women start businesses. It was her passion. After she died, I closed it down. I could not bear to continue it without her. But standing in your kitchen, tasting your coffee, I felt her presence. I heard her voice telling me what she always told me. Rashid, wealth means nothing if it does not serve life. He smiled sadly. She would have loved this place. And she would have been very angry with me if I walked away without trying to help. Mariana felt tears welling up. She thought of her own grandmother, of the legacy she was failing to preserve, of Sofia's dreams that hung in the balance. I don't know what to say. Say you will think about it. I am staying at the Four Seasons downtown. Here is my card. My lawyer can draw up papers that protect your interests completely. I do not want to take anything from you, Mrs. Torres. I want to give something back to a place that gave me something priceless this morning. He placed an elegant business card on the counter, then reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. He extracted what looked like several $100 bills. For the coffee and roll, and for the gift of memory. That's way too much, Mariana protested. No, Rashid said gently. It is not nearly enough, but it is a start. He smiled at her, and for the first time since entering, he looked lighter somehow. Think about my offer. Please, not for me, but for your grandmother's legacy, for your daughter, for yourself. Before Mariana could respond, he was gone, the door chime singing his departure. She stood there holding a card that read, Rashid Al-Mahmoud, Al-Mahmoud Ventures, with contact information in multiple countries, and enough cash to cover her rent for the month. Amy, the college student, pulled out her headphones. Do you know who that was? She asked, her eyes wide. Rashid Al-Mahmoud, Mariana repeated slowly. He's like one of the richest people in the world. His family owns half of Dubai. I wrote a paper on his company last semester. He's worth like billions. With a B. Mariana sank onto a stool, her legs suddenly weak. A billionaire had just offered to save her cafe. It seemed impossible. It seemed like a dream. It seemed too good to be true. But the card in her hand was real. The money was real. And the hope suddenly blooming in her chest felt real too. Hey, where are you watching this from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. We love hearing from our global audience. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you won't want to miss this journey. The meeting with the bank manager that afternoon felt surreal. Instead of begging for an extension, Mariana paid the overdue rent with Rashid's cash and left with her head held high for the first time in months. That evening, sitting at her small kitchen table in her modest apartment in Boyle Heights, she researched Rashid Al-Mahmoud. Amy had been right. The man was extraordinarily wealthy. His family's real estate and investment empire stretched across the Middle East and beyond. But what caught Mariana's attention were the recent articles about him. 6 months ago, he'd been a regular fixture in business news. Then suddenly, nothing. No interviews, no appearances, no deals announced. The last article she found was an obituary for his wife, Layla Al-Mahmoud, philanthropist and entrepreneur, dead at 51 from pancreatic cancer. The photo showed a beautiful woman with kind eyes, standing beside Rashid at some charity gala. They were looking at each other instead of the camera, and the love between them was palpable even in a still image. Mariana understood grief. She'd lost her grandmother, her father, her husband to divorce. But losing a partner that way, someone you'd built a life with, that was a different kind of pain. She picked up the business card, running her thumb over the embossed lettering. Was this legitimate? Could she trust him? What if it was some elaborate scam? But what did she have that was worth scamming? A failing cafe, and debt. Sofia walked in from her shift at the campus bookstore, dropping her backpack on the floor with a heavy thud. At 20, she looked like a younger version of Mariana. Same dark hair, same determined eyes, but where Mariana carried weariness, Sofia carried worry. Mom, about the tuition. It's handled, Mariana interrupted. Sofia blinked. What? How? Mariana told her about the morning's events, watching her daughter's expressions shift from disbelief to skepticism to cautious hope. When she finished, Sofia sat down heavily. Mom, you can't seriously be considering this. People like that don't just randomly help people like us. Why not? Because they don't. It's probably some tax scheme, or he wants to buy the building and tear it down, or maybe, Mariana said quietly, he's just a grieving man who wants to honor his wife's memory by doing something good. That's naive, Mom. Maybe. But what choice do I have? The cafe will close within 3 months if nothing changes. Your tuition, I can take a semester off. Get a full-time job. Absolutely not. You're not giving up your education because of me, but you gave up everything for me, Sofia's voice cracked. You work yourself to death in that cafe. You never date, never take a day off, never do anything for yourself. And for what? A building that's falling apart? Grandma wouldn't want you to sacrifice your life for… Your grandmother built something from nothing, Mariana said firmly. She came to this country with nothing but her coffee recipe and her dreams. That cafe kept her alive after Grandpa died. It put your dad through school, even if he was too much of an idiot to appreciate it. It gave me purpose when my marriage fell apart. And yes, it's struggling now. But maybe, just maybe, this is the miracle we've been praying for. Sofia was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, if you do this, you need a lawyer, a real one, to look over any contracts. Promise me. Mariana nodded. I promise. That night, lying in bed, Mariana composed and deleted a dozen emails to Rashid. Finally, she kept it simple. Mr. Al-Mahmoud, thank you for your generous offer. I would like to discuss the details. Please let me know when you're available to meet. Mariana Torres. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came within 10 minutes. Mrs. Torres, I am pleased to hear from you. Would tomorrow at 2 p.m. at my hotel be convenient? My lawyer will be present to ensure everything is clear and protects your interests. Please feel free to bring your own legal counsel as well. Best regards, Rashid. The next 24 hours passed in a blur. Mariana contacted a lawyer she'd known from the local business association, a sharp woman named Carmen Rodriguez, who'd helped her with permits and licensing issues over the years. She closed the cafe early, claiming a family emergency, and spent an hour trying to figure out what to wear to a meeting at the Four Seasons. Carmen met her in the hotel lobby, professional and calm in a way that made Mariana feel slightly less like an imposter. The Four Seasons downtown Los Angeles was a world away from Mariana's reality, all marble and elegance, and people who looked like they belonged in magazines. A concierge directed them to a private conference room on the executive floor. Rashid stood when they entered, his professional demeanor somehow warmer than his wealth suggested it should be. With him was an older man who introduced himself as James Harrison, senior partner at a major LA law firm. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and Mariana could see her cafe's neighborhood in the distance, small and insignificant from this height. Mrs. Torres, thank you for coming, Rashid said, shaking her hand and then Carmen's. Please, sit. Can we offer you anything? Coffee, tea, water is fine, Mariana said, her voice steady despite her nerves. James laid out a folder of documents. Mr. Al-Mahmoud has asked me to prepare an investment proposal that is, frankly, the most generous I've seen in my 30 years of practice. I want to walk you through it point by point, and please, ask any questions you have. Your lawyer is welcome to request changes or clarifications on anything. For the next hour, they went through the proposal. Rashid was offering to invest $500,000 in Mariana's corner in exchange for 20% ownership. The money would be used for renovating the cafe while preserving its character, upgrading equipment, paying off all existing debts, establishing a marketing budget, and creating a salary for Mariana, a real salary that would allow her to hire help and actually live, not just survive. But there were catches. There had to be catches. Mariana waited for them, her muscles tense. Carmen reviewed each clause carefully, asking pointed questions. But instead of the typical investor demands, creative control, decision-making power, profit maximization, the contract specified the opposite. Mariana would retain complete operational control. Any major decision about the cafe's direction, or changes to recipes or concept, would require her approval. Rashid would have transparency into the finances, but no authority over them. The investment was structured as a patient capital arrangement, meaning he didn't expect quick returns or aggressive growth. And most surprisingly, there was a clause allowing Mariana to buy back his stake at a set price within 10 years if she chose to. I don't understand, Mariana finally said. Why are these terms so favorable to me? Rashid leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Torres, I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. What I do not have is purpose or peace. This investment is not about making money. It is about preserving something real in a world that increasingly feels fake. Your cafe, your grandmother's legacy, your dedication, that is worth more than any return on investment. I want to be part of keeping it alive, not controlling it. Does that make sense? But what do you get out of it? She pressed. He smiled sadly. Perhaps redemption, perhaps purpose, perhaps just the satisfaction of knowing that good coffee and kindness will still exist on Spring Street. Is that not enough? Carmen leaned over and whispered to Mariana. I've reviewed everything twice. This contract is cleaner than most mortgages. He's serious. And he's being extraordinarily fair, but it's your decision. Mariana looked at Rashid, really looked at him. She saw past the expensive suit and the billionaire reputation to the man underneath, a man who'd lost his purpose and was trying to find it again, a man who'd loved his wife and wanted to honor her memory, a man who, in some fundamental way, was just as lost as she was. I have one question, Mariana said. Why didn't you just buy the building? Why go through all this? Because buying it would make it mine, Rashid replied simply. I do not want to own your dream, Mrs. Torres. I want to help you keep it. There is a difference. Mariana felt tears prickling at her eyes. She thought of her grandmother, of all the mornings she'd watched her make coffee with love and care. She thought of Sofia, working herself ragged to help with bills instead of focusing on her studies. She thought of the community she'd served for 15 years. The regulars who came in not just for coffee but for connection. Okay, she said quietly. Let's do this. The room seemed to exhale. Rashid's smile was genuine and reached his eyes for the first time. Thank you, Mrs. Torres. I promise you will not regret this. Over the next few weeks, Mariana's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. Rashid brought in a design team that specialized in historic renovations, people who understood that the soul of a place mattered more than modern aesthetics. They spent days at the cafe, taking photos, interviewing Mariana about her grandmother's vision, even tracking down old customers to ask about their memories of the place. The designer, a woman named Rachel with bright eyes and boundless energy, presented plans that made Mariana cry. They would restore the original details that had been covered or lost over the years. The tin ceiling tiles, the hexagonal floor tiles, the built-in booths along the wall. They'd repair and refinish everything rather than replace it. New equipment would be professional grade, but chosen to blend with the vintage aesthetic. Even the new sign would be hand-painted to match the style of the original. This place has a story, Rachel explained, spreading the renderings across a table in the closed cafe. We're not rewriting it, we're just turning the page to the next chapter. Rashid visited often during the planning phase. Always respectful, always asking rather than telling. He'd sit in the corner with his laptop, taking calls in Arabic and English, and occasionally French, but always pausing to say hello to the regular customers who continued to trickle in despite the renovation chaos. It was during one of these visits that Mariana finally asked him the question that had been bothering her. They were alone in the cafe, waiting for the contractor to arrive with samples. Rashid, she said. They'd moved to first names after the third week. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. What would your wife think of all this? Would she approve? He was quiet for a long time, staring at his coffee cup. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Layla always said that wealth was a responsibility, not a privilege. She believed that those of us fortunate enough to have resources must use them to lift others up. He paused, collecting himself. She started a foundation to help women entrepreneurs in the Middle East. After she died, I shut it down. I could not bear to continue it without her. But sitting here with you, watching you fight for your dream, I realize I was wrong to close it. I was not honoring her memory by giving up. I was betraying it. So this is about her, Mariana said gently. Yes and no. It began as being about her, but now it is also about you, about Sofia, about this community. Layla taught me that one act of genuine help creates ripples we cannot predict. By helping you, I am not just saving a cafe. I am perhaps helping Sofia finish college, or helping the customers who find community here, or inspiring someone else to preserve something meaningful rather than let it die. The ripples go on. Mariana reached across the table and squeezed his hand. She sounds like she was an amazing woman. She was, and she would have liked you very much. You remind me of her, actually. Same fierce determination, same refusal to give up. The renovation took 2 months. During that time, Mariana operated out of a pop-up space Rashid had arranged in a nearby food hall, keeping her regulars connected and building anticipation for the reopening. Sofia came home on weekends to help, and Mariana watched with pride as her daughter charmed customers and took initiative in ways she never had before. But it was one particular Saturday afternoon that everything changed in a way Mariana hadn't anticipated. She was boxing up pastries when Sofia approached her, nervous energy radiating off her. "Mom, I need to tell you something." Mariana's heart clenched. Those words never preceded good news. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, I've been thinking." Sofia took a deep breath. "I want to change my major." "Okay," Mariana said slowly. "To what?" "Business administration with a focus on hospitality management." Mariana stared at her daughter. Sofia had been studying environmental science, passionate about climate change and conservation. "But you love environmental science. You want to work for the EPA or—" "I thought I did," Sofia interrupted. "But watching all this, watching you and Rashid, and how the cafe is transforming, I realize something. This is what I want. I want to learn how to run businesses that have heart, how to make places that matter to communities, maybe even help other small businesses the way Rashid is helping us." She looked at her mother with shining eyes. "I want to carry on Grandma's legacy, Mom. But bigger. Better. I want to make her proud." Mariana couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. For years she'd worried that she was trapping Sofia with the cafe's struggles, making her daughter resent the family business. But now, seeing the passion and purpose in Sofia's eyes, she understood. She'd been showing Sofia something important all along: how to fight for what mattered, how to preserve meaning in a world that often discarded it. "She's already proud of you," Mariana whispered, "and so am I." The grand reopening was scheduled for a Saturday morning in early spring. The night before, unable to sleep, Mariana walked to the cafe at 2 a.m. The new sign glowed softly in the darkness. Mariana's Corner, Est, 1985. The windows sparkled clean, and through them, she could see the transformed interior. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The space was familiar yet renewed. The original tin ceiling gleamed. The restored booths lined the wall, and the vintage light fixtures cast a warm glow. But it was the wall behind the counter that made her cry. Rachel had created a photo timeline, starting with pictures of her grandmother's first day at the cafe and continuing through the years, her grandmother serving customers, Mariana learning to make coffee as a girl, the cafe through the decades, and finally, a new photo. Mariana standing with Rashid on the day they'd signed the investment papers, both of them smiling. Underneath the timeline, a plaque read, "Dedicated to the dreamers who build with their hands and feed with their hearts. In memory of Rosa Torres and Layla Al-Mahmoud." Mariana heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Rashid standing in the doorway. He looked almost nervous. "I hope you do not mind," he said, gesturing to the plaque. "I wanted to honor both of them, the women who taught us what matters." "It's perfect," Mariana managed to say. He walked over to stand beside her, both of them looking at the wall of memories. "Do you remember the first morning I came in here? You asked me what I recommended, and I asked what you recommended. The Turkish coffee." "Yes, I have been thinking about that moment. You did not know who I was. You did not know if I could pay or if I was just another struggling person looking for cheap coffee, but you recommended the thing you were most proud of, the thing that took the most effort. You could have pointed me to something quick and easy, but instead, you offered me something made with love. That told me everything I needed to know about you. I just wanted you to have good coffee," Mariana said simply. "And that," Rashid replied, "is exactly why this will work. You do not do this for money or recognition. You do it because it is who you are. Promise me something, Mariana. Promise me that even as this place grows and succeeds, and it will, you will never lose that. Never compromise on the love in every cup. I promise." They stood there in comfortable silence. Two people from completely different worlds who'd found common ground in a small cafe on Spring Street. Outside, the city was beginning to wake up, and soon people would gather here again, to drink coffee, to share stories, to find community in an increasingly disconnected world. The reopening was everything Mariana had hoped for and more. The line stretched around the block, a mix of old regulars and new faces drawn by the social media buzz Sofia had expertly generated. Local press showed up, charmed by the story of the billionaire investor who'd saved a family cafe. But what moved Mariana most was watching her community reclaim their space. Mr. Henderson in his usual corner, Amy at her favorite table, neighbors who'd drifted away slowly returning. And through it all, Rashid stayed in the background, refusing interviews, deflecting attention back to Mariana and her grandmother's legacy. He sat in a booth, drinking his Turkish coffee, watching with satisfaction as the cafe bustled with life. But it was 3 months after the reopening when the real surprise came. Mariana arrived at the cafe early one morning to find Rashid waiting outside, but he wasn't alone. With him stood Sofia, and a woman Mariana didn't recognize. Professional, elegant, probably in her 50s. "Good morning, Mrs. Torres," the woman said with a slight British accent. "My name is Diana Winters. I'm an attorney with Mr. Al-Mahmoud's foundation." Mariana looked between them, confused. "Foundation? I thought you closed your wife's foundation." Rashid smiled, a real smile, the kind Mariana rarely saw on his face. "I reopened it, but I changed the focus slightly. With your permission, I would like to make Mariana's Corner the first recipient of a new grant program. The Layla Al-Mahmoud Legacy Foundation will identify small, struggling businesses with strong community ties and help them survive and thrive, just as we did here. We want to create a model that can be replicated across the country." "I don't understand," Mariana said. Sofia stepped forward, practically bouncing with excitement. "Mom, Rashid has asked me to intern with the foundation this summer to help identify other businesses like ours and develop the program. It's paid, and it counts toward my degree requirements, and—" she took a breath. "He wants to feature your story as the foundation's first success case." Diana opened a folder. "We'd like to document your journey, Mrs. Torres. The struggles, the investment, the transformation. Not to exploit it, but to show other small business owners that help exists. That their communities matter. That they're not alone." Mariana felt overwhelmed. "Why? Why go to all this trouble?" "Because," Rashid said quietly, 3 months ago, I walked into this cafe, ready to give up on everything. I was drowning in grief and had lost all sense of purpose. But you gave me more than coffee that morning. You gave me hope. You showed me that meaning still exists in small acts of care, in preserving traditions, in fighting for what matters. If I can help other people find that same meaning, then perhaps Layla's death will not have been in vain. Perhaps some good can come from the pain." He looked at the cafe, then back at Mariana. "This place saved me, Mrs. Torres. Let me use that salvation to save others." Mariana's eyes filled with tears. She thought about the scared, desperate woman she'd been 6 months ago, counting pennies and wondering how much longer she could hold on. She thought about her grandmother, who'd built something from nothing in a country that wasn't always welcoming. She thought about Sofia, finding her purpose. And she thought about Rashid, a grieving billionaire who could have spent his money on anything but chose to invest it in hope. "On one condition," she finally said. "Anything. The foundation has to include a clause that requires investors to spend time in the businesses they help, not just write checks from a distance. If you're going to help people, you need to know them, understand their stories, drink their coffee. Otherwise, it's just numbers on a spreadsheet." Rashid's smile widened. Layla would have said the same thing. "You have a deal." Over the next year, Mariana's Corner became more than a cafe. It became a hub for the community, a symbol of resilience, and a model for what could happen when wealth met genuine need with respect and care. Sofia graduated with honors and accepted a full-time position with the foundation, traveling the country to find other Mariana's Corners, other people with dreams that deserved fighting for. The Layla Al-Mahmoud Legacy Foundation grew, helping dozens of small businesses in its first year. Each one had a story, a struggle, a human face behind the balance sheets. And because Rashid insisted on following Mariana's advice, he spent time in each one, learning their coffee recipes and their family histories, their failures and their hopes. But it was on a morning exactly 1 year after his first visit that Rashid walked into Mariana's Corner with news that would change everything once more. The cafe was busy. It always was now. 3 new employees worked behind the counter, all trained by Mariana in the exact way her grandmother had taught her. The espresso machine hummed efficiently. Customers chatted in the booths, and the aroma of fresh cinnamon rolls filled the air. Sofia was there too, home for the weekend, helping with the morning rush. Rashid waited patiently in line like any other customer, refusing the special treatment his investment might have granted him. When he reached the counter, Mariana greeted him with a warm smile that had become genuine affection over the months. "The usual?" she asked. "Please. And perhaps we could talk afterward? I have something important to discuss." An hour later, they sat in the same booth where he'd sat that first morning. Sofia joined them, curious about the serious tone in Rashid's voice. "I need to tell you both something," he began, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup. "And I need to apologize." Mariana's stomach tightened. "Apologize for what?" "For not being completely honest with you from the beginning." He took a deep breath. "When I walked in here that first morning, it was not entirely random. My driver did not just happen to bring me here." The air seemed to still. Sofia's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "For 2 months before that morning, I had been searching, not just traveling aimlessly, but specifically looking for something, someone. He looked directly at Mariana. I was looking for my daughter. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Mariana felt the blood drain from her face. What? Rashid pulled out an old photograph from his wallet, his hands trembling slightly. It showed a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, with dark hair and eyes that looked hauntingly familiar. This is Layla when we first met. She was a student in London, and I was there on business. We fell in love, but our families, they did not approve. Her family was traditional, conservative. When she became pregnant, they gave her an impossible choice: abandon the child or be disowned entirely. Mariana couldn't breathe. Sofia reached for her mother's hand. She was terrified. Rashid continued, his voice breaking. We were so young, unmarried, and the scandal would have destroyed both our families. So she made the hardest decision of her life. She gave the baby up for adoption to an American couple she'd met through the university's international program, a couple who promised her the child would be loved and raised well. No, Mariana whispered, that's not possible. The couple's name was Torres, Robert and Rosa Torres. The cafe sounds faded to white noise. Mariana felt like she was drowning. Rosa Torres, her grandmother, the woman who'd raised her after her own parents died in a car accident when she was 3. The grandmother who'd never talked about where Mariana's mother had come from, who'd always changed the subject when young Mariana asked about her birth parents. I don't believe you, Mariana said, but her voice lacked conviction. Pieces of her life were clicking into place like a puzzle she hadn't known existed. Her grandmother's sadness whenever Mariana asked about her mother, the sealed adoption records, the way strangers sometimes commented on her exotic features, unusual for the Torres family. Rashid pulled out more documents, adoption papers, old letters, photographs. After Layla died, I found these in her personal safe. She never stopped looking for you. Never stopped wondering if you were okay. She hired investigators over the years, but adoption laws made it nearly impossible to find you. All she knew was that you'd been adopted by the Torres family in Los Angeles. He spread the papers on the table, his eyes glistening. When she got sick, finding you became her obsession, but the cancer moved so fast. In her final days, she made me promise I would keep searching, that I would make sure you were safe and happy. After she died, I hired the best investigators in the world. It took 2 months, but they traced Rosa Torres to a cafe in downtown LA, a cafe now owned by her granddaughter Mariana. So all of this, Sofia's voice was cold, sharp. The investment, the foundation, the friendship, it was all a lie? You just wanted to meet your daughter without telling her the truth? No, Rashid's vehemence surprised them both. That is, yes, I knew who you were when I walked in, but everything else, the investment, the help, my reasons, all of that was genuine. I came here planning to observe you from a distance, to see if you were happy, to fulfill my promise to Layla. But then you made me that coffee, and you were kind to me, and I saw so much of Layla in you, your determination, your warmth, your refusal to compromise on what matters. He wiped his eyes, unashamed of his tears. I fell in love with the person you are, not just the idea of you as my daughter. Mariana stood abruptly, needing space, needing air. Sofia followed her to the back of the cafe, away from the curious customers. They stood in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Rashid had first proposed his investment, and Mariana felt her entire identity crumbling. Mom, are you okay? Sofia's voice was gentle, worried. I don't know. I don't know what I am anymore. If what he's saying is true, then my grandmother lied to me my entire life. Everything I thought I knew about myself is still true, Sofia interrupted firmly. You're still you. You're still the woman who built this cafe, who raised me alone, who never gave up. DNA doesn't change that. But he's my father, my biological father, and he's been lying to me for a year. Has he, though? Sofia's question was thoughtful, not accusatory. He kept one secret, but everything else. Has he ever been dishonest? Has he ever tried to control you or manipulate you? Or has he just been a friend who happened to help when you needed it most? Mariana thought about the past year, about Rashid's unfailing respect for her decisions, his genuine interest in preserving her grandmother's legacy, his refusal to take credit or control, about the late-night conversations where he'd shared his grief and listened to her fears, about the way he'd encouraged Sofia's dreams and celebrated Mariana's successes as if they were his own. She walked back to the booth. Rashid looked up at her with an expression of such vulnerable hope that it broke her heart. Why didn't you tell me from the beginning? She asked quietly. Because I was a coward, he admitted. Because I was afraid you would reject me, refuse my help, see me as nothing but a stranger trying to buy his way into your life. Because I wanted you to know me as a person first, not as a biological connection you never asked for." He paused. "And because I wanted to give you the choice. If I had told you immediately, you might have felt obligated to accept my help, to have a relationship with me. This way, anything that has developed between us, any friendship or affection, is genuine. You chose it freely." "That's manipulative," Sofia said, but her tone was less harsh than before. "Yes," Rashid agreed, "it is, and I am sorry. But I would rather be manipulative and have you in my life on honest terms than be straightforward and lose the chance to know you at all. Perhaps that makes me a terrible person. Perhaps it makes me a desperate father. I'm not sure there is a difference." Mariana sat down, her mind racing. "Tell me about her, about Layla, about my birth mother." Rashid's face transformed with a sad smile, and he began to talk. He told them about Layla's laugh, loud and unrestrained in a way that scandalized her traditional family, about her passion for helping others, how she'd sneak food to homeless people and volunteer at shelters even when her family disapproved, about her stubbornness. She'd gone to university against her family's wishes, had insisted on marrying Rashid despite the scandal of her past, had built a charity empire that changed thousands of lives. She was fierce, Rashid said, like you, Mariana. When she decided something mattered, nothing could stop her. She fought her cancer for 3 years, much longer than doctors predicted, because she refused to leave me alone. Even at the end, when she was so weak she could barely speak, she was making plans for the foundation, writing letters to people she wanted to help. He pulled out one final envelope, worn from handling. "She wrote this for you, years ago, when she first started looking. She updated it periodically, right up until a week before she died. I have been carrying it, waiting for the right moment to give it to you. I do not know if this is that moment, but I cannot hold on to it anymore." With shaking hands, Mariana took the envelope. Inside was a letter, several pages long, written in elegant script. The first line made her vision blur with tears. "To my daughter, whose name I do not know, but whose existence has shaped every day of my life." She couldn't read it there, not in front of everyone. She folded it carefully and put it in her apron pocket. "I need time," she said, "to process all of this, to read her letter, to figure out what this means." "Of course," Rashid stood immediately. "Take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere. Whether you want me in your life as your father, as a friend, as a business partner, or not at all, that is entirely your choice. Nothing will change the investment or the foundation. That was never conditional on you accepting me." He walked toward the door, then paused. "For what it is worth, Rosa Torres, your grandmother, she gave you everything my selfishness and fear took away. She raised you with love and wisdom, and taught you to make coffee that tastes like home. I can never repay her for that gift, but I hope, perhaps, I can honor it by being the father to you now that I failed to be then." After he left, Mariana and Sofia sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Sofia spoke. "Do you want me to stay home this week? Cancel my foundation trip?" "No," Mariana said firmly. "You have work to do, important work. I'll be okay." "Are you sure?" Mariana thought about it. Was she okay? Her world had just been turned inside out. The grandmother she'd loved had kept massive secrets. The man she'd come to trust as a friend and partner was actually her biological father. Her birth mother, a woman she'd never known, had loved her from a distance for 42 years, but she was still standing, still breathing, still the owner of a thriving cafe that served her community, still the mother of an incredible daughter, still the granddaughter of a woman who'd given up everything to raise her. "I will be," she said, eventually. That night, alone in her apartment, Mariana finally read Layla's letter. It was beautiful and heartbreaking, full of love and regret and hope. Layla wrote about the day she'd given Mariana up, how she'd held her for 2 hours before the Torres family arrived, memorizing every feature. She wrote about birthdays spent wondering what Mariana looked like, what she enjoyed, whether she was happy. She wrote about the guilt that never faded and the love that never diminished. But more than anything, she wrote about her dreams for Mariana. Not specific dreams like careers or relationships, but deeper hopes that Mariana would know she was loved, that she would find meaning and purpose, that she would be brave enough to fight for what mattered, that she would build a life of substance and connection. The final paragraph gutted her. "If you are reading this, then I am gone, and Rashid has finally found you. I hope you can forgive him for keeping this secret. He wanted to protect you, to give you the choice I never had. I hope you can forgive me for giving you up, even though I know that forgiveness may be too much to ask. But most of all, I hope you are happy. I hope you have built a beautiful life, and I hope you know that every day, somewhere in the world, a woman who never stopped being your mother was loving you with everything she had. You were my first love and my greatest regret. Not because I regretted you, but because I regretted my weakness in letting you go. If I could do it again, I would fight harder. I would be braver. But perhaps my loss was your gain, because the Tauruses gave you everything I couldn't. For that, I am grateful. Be well, my daughter. Be fierce, be true, and know that you were loved. Always, your mother. Layla. Mariana cried until she had no tears left. She grieved for the mother she'd never known, for the grandmother who'd carried such heavy secrets, for the father who'd been denied the chance to raise her. But she also felt something else, a strange sense of completion, as if pieces of herself she hadn't known were missing had suddenly clicked into place. The next morning, she opened the cafe as usual, going through the familiar motions with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. Around noon, Rashid appeared in the doorway, hesitant, hopeful, terrified. Mariana poured 2 cups of Turkish coffee and gestured to the booth. When they were seated, she said, I read her letter, and I'm angry at both of you for lying, for keeping secrets, for deciding what I should and shouldn't know about my own life. Rashid nodded, accepting her anger without defense. But I'm also grateful, Mariana continued, because you helped me when I needed it most. And you did it with respect and kindness, because you've been a genuine friend, because you've honored my grandmother's legacy and supported my daughter's dreams, because you loved Layla enough to spend 2 months searching for a daughter you never knew, just to fulfill a dying wish. She took a sip of coffee, organizing her thoughts. I don't know if I can call you father. That word belongs to the grandfather who raised me, even though I barely remember him, and to my grandmother, who played both roles for most of my life. But maybe you could be Rashid, my friend Rashid, who happens to also be my biological father, who happens to also be my business partner, who happens to also be family, in whatever form that takes. Rashid's eyes filled with tears. That would be more than I deserve and more than I dared hope for. There are conditions, Mariana said firmly. No more secrets, ever. If you have information about my past, about Layla, about anything, I want to know. I get to decide what I do with that information, but I deserve to have it. Agreed, absolutely. And you have to tell Sofia yourself. About being her grandfather. She deserves to hear it from you, of course. And, Mariana paused, feeling vulnerable. You have to tell me about Layla. Not just the highlights, but everything. The good, the bad, the messy parts. I want to know who she really was, not just the saint in the obituaries. Rashid smiled through his tears. She would like that. She hated being idealized. She always said, I am not a saint, I am just stubborn. Over the following months, a new normal emerged. Rashid became a regular fixture at the cafe. Not as the mysterious investor, but as family. He and Sofia developed a warm relationship. She called him Jido, the Arabic word for grandfather, which made him cry the first time she used it. He told Mariana stories about Layla, sharing photographs and memories, helping her build a picture of the mother she'd never known. But more than that, they built something new together. The foundation flourished, helping dozens of businesses across the country. Sofia graduated and became the foundation's youngest director, bringing fresh ideas and passionate commitment to their mission. And Mariana's Corner continued to thrive, not just as a cafe, but as a symbol of what could happen when loss transformed into love, when privilege met need with humility, when secrets gave way to truth. It was on Layla's birthday, 18 months after that first morning, that they held a special ceremony at the cafe. Mariana and Rashid commissioned a second plaque, mounted beside the first. This one read, For Layla Al-Mahmoud, who loved from a distance and dreamed of second chances, and for Rosa Torres, who turned those dreams into reality. 2 mothers, 2 legacies, 1 love. The ceremony was small, intimate, just family and close friends. Sofia gave a speech about the grandmother she'd never met, but whose blood ran through her veins. Rashid spoke about second chances, and the strange ways grief could transform into grace. And Mariana, standing in the cafe her grandmother had built, surrounded by the family she'd thought she'd lost, and the family she'd found, finally understood what Layla had meant in her letter. She had been loved, always, by the mother who'd given her up so she could have a better life, by the grandmother who'd sacrificed everything to raise her, by the father who'd searched for her even when he didn't know if she'd want to be found, by the daughter who'd chosen to honor legacy over ease, by the community that had supported her cafe through decades of change. Love wasn't always visible. Sometimes it looked like letting go. Sometimes it looked like holding on. Sometimes it looked like a billionaire walking into a struggling cafe and ordering coffee. Sometimes it looked like a grandmother keeping painful secrets to protect her granddaughter's granddaughter's heart. Sometimes it looked like a mother writing letters to a child she'd never see again. But it was always there, weaving through their lives like the aroma of coffee and cinnamon, connecting them across time and distance and loss. As the ceremony ended and people mingled, drinking coffee and sharing stories, Mariana stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Spring Street, and the city hummed with its usual chaotic energy. But here, in this small corner of Los Angeles, something extraordinary had happened. A failing cafe had been saved. A broken man had found purpose. A daughter had discovered her history. A granddaughter had found her calling. And two women who'd never met, one from Istanbul and one from Dubai, had both loved the same child fiercely enough to change the course of multiple lives. Rashid joined her on the sidewalk, and they stood together in comfortable silence. Finally, he said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not walked into your cafe that morning? If I had chosen a different street, a different city?" Mariana thought about it. "I think Layla would have found another way to bring us together. She seems like she was that kind of woman. Stubborn, determined, unwilling to accept defeat." "She was," Rashid agreed, smiling, "just like her daughter." Inside the cafe, laughter erupted. Sofia was telling a story, animated and joyful, surrounded by the extended family that had formed around this unlikely connection. The sound drifted out to the street, warm and alive and full of promise. "Thank you," Mariana said quietly. "For what?" "For searching, for finding me, for saving the cafe, for honoring Layla's memory, for being brave enough to walk through that door, even though you didn't know how I'd react." She turned to look at him, this man who was her father but also her friend, her partner, her family. "Thank you for giving me the chance to know where I came from, even if I'm still figuring out what that means. Thank you for letting me try to be the father I should have been, even if I am 42 years too late." "You're not too late," Mariana said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "You're exactly on time. Maybe not for my childhood, but for this chapter, for Sofia's future, for the foundation and all the people it will help, for the second chance we both needed." They walked back inside together, into the warmth and noise and love of Mariana's corner. The cafe was full, every seat taken, the line steady, the energy vibrant. On the wall, the two plaques gleamed, telling a story of sacrifice and love and unlikely redemption. And behind the counter, a new girl Mariana had just hired was learning to make Turkish coffee the traditional way, grinding the beans by hand and preparing it with the same care Rosa had taught Mariana, who had learned it from her own grandmother in Istanbul. Traditions passed down, legacies preserved, love transforming across generations. As the afternoon faded into evening and the cafe prepared to close, Mariana took one last moment to stand in the center of the room and simply breathe it all in. The smell of coffee and cinnamon, the sound of conversation and laughter, the sight of her daughter and father working side by side, planning the foundation's next project, the feeling of community and connection that filled every corner of this space. A year ago, she'd been drowning, terrified of losing everything her grandmother had built. Today, she stood in a thriving cafe, surrounded by family she'd never known existed, with a future that stretched out bright and full of possibility, all because a grieving billionaire had walked through her door looking for redemption and found something even better, home. And in that moment, Mariana finally understood what both her mothers had tried to teach her from opposite sides of the world and the grave. That love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It was about showing up, about making coffee with care even when you were exhausted, about searching for lost daughters even when the search seemed impossible, about preserving traditions even when the world pushed for change, about choosing hope even when despair seemed easier. It was about recognizing that sometimes the most extraordinary transformations began with the simplest acts: a cup of coffee, a kind word, a door held open to possibility. The cafe's lights glowed warm against the darkness of Spring Street, a beacon of hope in a city that often felt too big and too cold. But here, in Mariana's corner, there was warmth, there was family, there was the kind of love that transcended biology and circumstance and loss, and there was coffee. Always there was coffee, made the right way, with patience and respect and love, just as it should be, just as Rosa and Layla, from their different corners of the world, had always dreamed it would be.